Now to the latest out of the Middle East as the fighting in Gaza continues and the death toll on both sides continues to increase. There are reports today that Israel's war cabinet have met to discuss a three-step plan put forward by Egypt to end the war. The proposal, which was seen by the Wall Street Journal, reportedly calls for an initial pause in fighting to allow for a release of Israeli hostages, including the remaining children, women and elderly, in exchange for about 140 Palestinian prisoners, many of these terrorists. Also proposed after that, the formation of a transitional government for Gaza and the West Bank, made up of a mix of Palestinian factions, which would include Hamas. Now, it's hard to see Israel ever accepting any deal that includes Hamas retaining any power whatsoever over the Gaza Strip. And Hamas, for its part, recently rejected another ceasefire offer and has broken a previous temporary ceasefire, so not exactly a partner for peace. It all comes as the Australian ambassador has accused Prime Minister Anthony Albanese of sending mixed messages over the war with Hamas. In a rare interview with the Australian newspaper, Mr. Maimon said the Prime Minister understands that Hamas cannot be part of future governance in Gaza, yet supports a ceasefire. These are contradictory messages. He also said the Jewish state's fight against terrorism has been held to a different standard to Australia's own operations in Afghanistan and lamented that Israeli citizens do not feel safe in this country. Joining me now to discuss this and much more is the past chair of Foreign Affairs and Defence Committee, Michael Danby. Michael, thank you for your time. We've seen Labor, a party you previously represented as an MP, do an about-face on its support for a ceasefire this month. A Hamas leader even released a video praising Australia for its new direction. Does the ambassador have a point?
Well, it's shameful that Hamas was praising our policy. UK and other countries abstained on that ceasefire vote, and Australia should have as well. Of course, we've changed our policy. Of course, the ambassador's right. Of course, this is a different kind of Labor government than ones of the past. Can you ever imagine a Hawke, Beazley, Shorten or Keating government doing this? It wouldn't have been so. A unilateral ceasefire, as Penny Wong and Anthony Albanese know very well, means that Hamas stays in control of the Gaza Strip. Imagine living next door, Caroline, or any of your listeners, to these rapists and murderers in control of a state apparatus. It's impossible. Unfortunately, that's why part of the Egyptian peace plan, which is well meant, and the Egyptians are playing a constructive role, just won't fly.
So you don't see this proposal from Egypt getting up, do you? I mean, what chance is there of this war ending beyond the next few months?
Well, for the reasons you outlined in another part of the introduction was that Hamas is refusing to release further hostages, even for a pause, and that means that we can't go forward with the first two parts of the Egyptian plan, let alone the part where it says Israel must withdraw entirely and have a Palestinian committee of experts, which includes both the PA and Hamas. Hamas won't be left in control of the Gaza Strip. There's a consensus of 95% of people across the Israeli political spectrum that says no. We can have Palestinians, we can have international authorities, we can have Egyptians, anything, but there will not be an organisation that posed that civilisational threat that it did on October 7. I mean, it's all very well for some people who've, including been on this network during the day, saying that Australia and the international coalition lost the war in Afghanistan because we couldn't suppress the Taliban. But Australia and New Zealand and the United States and Canada weren't living next door to the Taliban. That's what we're proposing that the Israelis do, that they live next door to these people who did the most appalling things on October the 7th, which we can't avert our eyes from. And in the meantime, they won't release 100 plus hostages who were there, including the terrible fate of those two babies, 4 and 11 months, and all of the women who've been, in my fear, been subject to sexual violence from these beasts. In Hamas.
The Bibas children, it's so heartbreaking. To me, they're really the face of this hostage situation, and to hear those reports that they may have been killed, which have come out from Hamas. I mean, we know that Hamas has given wrong information about that previously. But also, Michael, I mean, this idea from this peace proposal that Hamas can even work with other Palestinian groups like Fatah, when we know that's not the case, it just doesn't seem pragmatic.
When they took over in Gaza from Fatah after that election, where you have to admit they were supported by the majority of local Palestinians in Gaza, they threw Fatah officials off the roof, along with gay people. Now, the idea that they can, enjoy happy, clappy times, singing Kumbaya and running the Gaza Strip is, nonsense, and is just putting off the conflict and making it worse. What we need to do is to see Hamas defeated, and I define defeat as more of their militants being killed, including the leadership Deif and Sinwar in the Strip. Then Israel will go to quieter operations and then seek an international plan led by the Arab nations to run the Gaza Strip with a committee of experts. There's a very good bloke who's the Prime Minister of the Palestinian Authority, who's not a crook, unlike Mohammed Abbas, who's not a person who denies the Holocaust, unlike Mohammed Abbas, and who's not a mass-murdering rapist and killer like Sinwar or Deif or any of these people who run Hamas. Together with international support from the Arab world, he could run a committee of experts. It'd have to be undemocratic and non-elected for a few years, but there'll be no Hamas running the Gaza Strip, despite the best intentions of Egypt. By the way, Caroline, they hate the Muslim Brotherhood because they nearly ruined Egypt, and Hamas is the Palestinian arm of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yeah, I mean, it's very idealistic. People who call for ceasefire and, don't understand all the complexity of the situation. Before I let you go, Michael, I want to get your reaction to a story I brought our viewers at the top of the show about another memorial service being planned this week in Sydney for a Hezbollah terrorist. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I was on the Intelligence Committee of Federal Parliament, along with being chairman of its Foreign Affairs and Defence Committee. And there's a very involved process. ASIO recommends to the Intelligence Committee, and the Intelligence Committee recommends to the Attorney General different groups that are prescribed as terrorist organisations. It's very serious, and all of the organs of the Australian state are involved in it. And I tell that leader of that mosque in Sydney, Hezbollah is a prescribed terrorist organisation by effort of the Australian Parliament. Very serious. And the Director General of ASIO says that some of the demos that the Palestinians have been having are a safety valve, but memorial services for Hezbollah fighters are very dangerous. And what's the next step beyond this? We have to call a line across some of this. They're doing all the demos in Chadstone and in Federation Square and running convoys through Bondi and Botany. Caroline's got to be called a stop. It's being run better by Minns in New South Wales. He's calling a stop to more of this. But in Victoria, these people are just dominating public spaces. They may not be Hezbollah funerals, but you can't go to Chadstone or Federation Square or RMIT without these people pushing and harassing and shouting and screaming at people.
And it's so counterproductive, isn't it? Okay, Michael, Danby, thank you so much for your time. It's been really insightful.